Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm John from HValley Tools, and we're going to get back onto our videos for the fall. And I apologize for the lapse, but we had our open house, which is a huge monster event, and we had a gigantic turnout, and it takes like 3 weeks to recover from that. So let's talk today about epoxy. And it's a newer trend in woodworking, and it's really cool what's happening. And you think about epoxy, we always think about glue. You know, you're gluing two things together, you mix up your epoxy, you're making a door epoxy, okay? So the old way we used to think about epoxy was two-part epoxy. There's a resin and a hardener. You have your little digital scale and your mixing cup, and you put in one, you measure it, you put in the other one, you measure it, you mix it up, you use your brush, you glue it on, and now you have your joint. 24 hours later, super strong. Well, that was your old epoxy. The new epoxies are incredible, okay? So there's new companies that are evolving that have started with epoxy as glue, but now we're getting into pouring epoxies, finishing epoxies, artisan epoxies. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. The thing that you have to think about is, what are you doing, okay? Because now there's like 5 different epoxies where there used to be just one. And these are crystal clear. They're stupid strong. They're easy to use, easy to mix, and a lot of them are less viscous. They really pour like beautifully. So as we start on this, I want you to think about what you need before you dive in, okay? So first, let's talk about epoxy. The brand that we sell is Super Clear, and we did a lot of research, and there's some really great companies out there. It's just that we picked Super Clear. They are just terrific people to work with. They have like 30, 40 years in this, and their products really work well. So as an example, here's deep pour epoxy, and that's for up to 2 to 4 inches, nothing below that. Tabletop epoxy, which is for surface tabletop pours, about up to 1/4 to 1/2 of an inch. And now we have this new one, artisan epoxy, which is used for charcuterie boards, finishing bowls, things like that, anything where you think that you're going to eat out of. And it's just to make sure that it's food safe. And they actually introduced a new product called countertop epoxy, which is stupid hard. It's an amazing product. It pours really well. Haven't gotten it yet, but we're working on it. And these are the applications that you can see. The nice thing is that you get really decent instructions. Their instruction manuals are excellent. They talk about everything: warm weather, cold weather, get a cool sticker, and easy to read, easy to understand. And it's actually easy to mix. So let's talk about mixing, okay? You're gonna need something to mix with. Now, we sell the epoxy cups, and they're really useful because the epoxy does not stick to these. You can mix in it, and then when it's done, you can pop it out and dispose of it. But it's nice to have cups. Usually I like a bigger cup to mix in and a smaller cup to measure in, okay? And it's nice to have some accessories, so you go up to the kitchen and steal all the silicone spatulas and things like that. Just don't tell your wife. So you get things like these, and these we got at the local grocery store. These are silicone spatulas and a little silicone knife scraper, and they're great for getting the epoxy out when you're pouring it. Nice to have, and when it's done, you just peel it off. The other thing that you're going to need is something to mix with. So you can buy mixing sticks, sell a pack of these. These are really cheap. Or you can use a helical arbor, okay? Now, this thing's really cool, and when you mix with these, you can get less bubbles, okay, because we're not introducing a lot of air. The only thing is that I found that when you use a helical and an arbor, okay, the mixing time could be dramatically less because it really mixes faster. So sometimes the instructions will recommend a hand mixing time, and you might have to cut that in half when you use a helical. You always check with the manufacturer, though, to make sure. And cool little things to have, like a silicone. This is a basting brush. It's silicone, and you can use this for spreading glue out, epoxy out on your surface, and that's usually necessary when we're doing a top coat. So we want to do a tabletop or a live edge, and we want to pour the epoxy on. Well, you just don't pour it on. you actually have to seal the piece first with a very thin coat of epoxy. Otherwise, you'll get a thing called bleed. Air bubbles will bleed out of the wood because of the porosity. So what we want to do is make a spit coat, brush it all on, rub it in with your gloved hands. Make sure you have gloves. You rub it on, let it dry, and then do your pour. It just prevents those little bleed bubbles that come up and you're just like, what do I do about this? What do we do about the bubbles? You can't do anything about the bubbles once they're in the epoxy. So it's usually machine it off. It's very difficult to fix. So that's why we want to avoid bubbles at all costs. And there's a million videos on there about how to use torches and hot air guns to remove bubbles and to get an even spread. The other thing that you might want to have with you is things called silicone spreaders. Okay, these are really cool. A lot of times these are from the automotive industry. They're silicone spreaders. They use them for Bondo, but they're real soft and nothing sticks to them. And it's really nice when you need to move the epoxy around because you're going to pour it and it's going to sit there. So we need to move it around and get some coverage. These things are wonderful to have. They really are. Now you're like, okay, I'm ready to do this. So you're going to do a test pour, and you do a small project and you learn the casting time, how to set it up, how to pour it, and you get that done. And you do your first pour and you're like, yes, I got it. And then you're like, geez, that's kind of boring. I want to add some color to it. I want to make it pop. Okay, cool. Now, what do we need? Well, there's two things that you got to think about. One is pigment and the other is colorant. Okay, and you're like, okay, what's the difference? Pigment is solid color. So these things over here are pigments. Red, green, blue, yellow, black, white. You just want to color red. Boom, it's red. There's not a whole lot there, it's just red. And you're saying, well, that's kind of boring. I really want kind of a red swirl. Well, now we're talking about mica powders. And we use a brand called Black Diamond. And again, after researching, I found that their colors are some of the best. I like their mixtures. Prices are great, and you don't need a lot. So if you're like, geez, I'm not sure, well, then you buy a variety pack. So a variety pack, and there's like 20 of these, all different kinds of colors, and they have enough here to get a sample. So when you're mixing a colorant in, they provide these little spoons, and there's like a little drug spoon for colorants, and you just put it in, you mix it in, and bam, you're done. How much do you use? It depends on how dark you want it or how translucent you want it. It's a little bit of alchemy there. You got to kind of figure it out as you go. And then the other thing that you want to think about is when you're casting, you're making a mold, okay? Now, epoxy is still a glue. So then you're like, okay, I got this wood frame and the epoxy is going to glue to it. You're right. So what we need is some kind of liner to protect it. So the recommendation is to use Tyvek tape. A lot of guys use it. It works great. The other thing you can do is a mold release agent. And we use Miracle Gloss. It's really good stuff. It's not cheap, but boy does it work. It's kind of like the stuff that Mom used to use in the pans when she would make a pound cake. You know, you put the stuff in, you pour in the cake, and then bake it, you pop it out it comes. Miracle Gloss is amazing. It really works well, and it doesn't interact with the epoxy. Sometimes some of these mold release agents will leave a funny edge and do some weird things. After that, now you've got this beautiful thing, and what are you going to do next? Most times, if you're doing a tabletop pour, you don't have to do a whole lot. Sometimes the epoxy just levels out like glass, and you're done. Sometimes it doesn't, and it depends on the conditions. So you might have to do a sand on it and a polish. So what do we have to do? Well, we normally use a high grit. We don't want to flatten it. So what we're doing is we're using a 600, 800, 1000 grit sand pad. We're just scuffing the surface and getting it even. And then we're going to get an epoxy polish. And there's a ton of them out there. There's really some good ones from 3M. They require a lot more experience to use, and there's some awesome ones that we're going to be bringing in here as well that we're working with, a local company in Easton, Pennsylvania. It's awesome. It's a great product, and it comes out like glass. The beauty of this is that you can create anything you want. You can make any design and have fun with it. So this is pretty much the sampling of everything that you're going to need when you want to make epoxy. Do you need all of it? No. but you can come into the store. We have all these supplies. You can ask us questions. The super clear products have sold incredibly well in the store. Customers love it. They come back for more, and it's really a great product to have. And there's also some cool things in the store for you to see, in-store specials that are not online, kind of a little thank you for coming in and supporting the showroom. And again, always, if you have any questions, give us a buzz. We're always willing to help and talk with you and help you guide and understand what you need and go from there. Thank you again for your support of HValley Tools, and we look forward to seeing you again.